welcome to the Read All Over show, presented by Lit Carnival and me, your host, Toy Thomas, author, blogger, and reading advocate. I'm so excited about today's guest. Kait Disney-Leugers is bringing a touch of magic and a little romance to every day. Let's meet Kait. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, well, it's a Monday, but I'm very excited about this interview.
Thanks to get through this.
Go ahead and tell the readers a little bit about yourself.
I write paranormal romance. My current series is Magic, Love, and Mischief. There are two books out right now, Antique Magic and Blood Magic, with Heart Magic coming out in January next year. I write full-time. I'm a full-time mom. I come from actually a background in history, but spent most of my career working in Silicon Valley in marketing. So this has been another career change and very drastic.
Wow, that's cool. So I know that I personally discovered you because of a table I went to at I think it was GalaxyCon, and there was a bunch of different authors, and some of them had like bookmarks and things like that. Before we get into the actual like segments of the show, I love talking about, kind of experiences at like book fairs and cons and things like that. Have you had a lot of experience at different like cons and things? What have you experienced?
I've actually only ever been to one con. I went to GalaxyCon Richmond, was my first one. I was with the pop-up bookshop, which is where you found my bookmark there. I was supposed to go to Raleigh, but I had family obligations that kept me from going. So my book's got to go, but I gotta live vicariously through everybody on Instagram and everything. But I've had the one time I got to go to GalaxyCon, and I'm also going to GalaxyCon Columbus later this year. It was wonderful getting to talk to people about my books, about books in general. Just getting people who don't necessarily always read into something new.
Yeah.
What we do with the pop-up bookshop, we hype each other. We're not just selling our book, we're selling a friend's book. I have a friend I met at the pop-up bookshop, and now I keep her book on my bookshelf for moments like this. This is
Awesome.
Leslie Summers. They write together. They're fantastic. So I met them literally at the pop-up bookshop, and it has formed a great friendship in that. So cons are a great way to meet people, engage with readers. I love it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I've had that experience before too, where I've kind of had like a group of authors that I was kind of like paired with, and I've made like some lasting friendships from that. And it's really cool. I do think that of all the different kind of little things that people can like be into, bookish people are like the friendliest, I think. And it's really cool to, be in that environment.
Definitely, absolutely love that. And being able to see people face to face, like I had somebody who's like, "You're an author," and just like, and like, "Yeah, she bought my book. She wanted a picture with me." I'm like, "Nobody wants a picture with me."
Yeah.
And she did. She asked for a picture. I signed her book, and she put it up on Instagram. So I had my little celebrity moment.
I know. I think those are some of the best moments. So I want to go ahead and kind of dive into the interview. So a little just about me, which I may have mentioned this already, but I am an avid reader. I consider myself a reading advocate. I think everyone should have a healthy reading lifestyle, whatever that means for them. And so, especially when it comes to writers, I feel like if you're going to engage in the craft, you should always be studying it by reading. So I'm going to ask a little bit about you as a reader.
Great.
All right, so the first segment on the bookshelf, I would like to know, what is your favorite genre to read?
Oh, romance, hands down. But I also love fantasy. I grew up with fantasy, and honestly, I've just gotten into romance the last couple of years.
You
But if you
know,
got fantasy romance,
yeah, I think I definitely, like fantasy and science fiction and stuff, but I discovered romance about 10 years ago. And it's one of those genres that it's not something that I read all the time, but when I do find like a good one, especially if it's a series, that's like the only thing that I read for a while. I'm still very much like the sci-fi geek girl, but if I find a good romance that I like, that's it.
all I mean, I had that with like the Brown Sisters series. Like, I fell in love. I actually read the third one first, and like, I love this. Went out and bought the first two. Um, and it's just somebody I just kind of fell into reading romance. There was romance books on my bookshelves back home growing up, And I picked up my first Nora Roberts a couple years ago, and I started reading like, oh wow, I love this, and I kept reading more. And then I called my mom like, you had Nora Roberts on your bookshelf. Why didn't you tell me this is good? And she's like, it was there.
Yeah.
But I mean, fantasy is kind of my comfort read. That's where I come from, is fantasy.
Cool, cool. All right. So, so this next one, since you mentioned that, you had books in your house as a kid, what was the favorite book that you read as a kid, and do you still like it now?
My favorite growing up was Sabriel by Garth Nix from the Old Kingdom trilogy, and I guess kind of wider universe now. It's one I would read all the time from the library, and I actually still have the copy I bought back in like middle school on my shelf back there. I still love it. I actually, a couple of years ago, listened to the audiobooks for the first three books, narrated by Tim Curry. It is the most amazing audiobook I've ever listened to.
By Tim Curry? That's crazy.
Great.
That's cool. So it's funny that you mentioned that you still have the book from, back in the day. Do you happen to know if they've done like updated covers? Because like I have an old copy of like Secret Garden, but it's had so many different covers. Like the one that I have, like I've never like seen it in print other than the one that I have.
Yeah. Well, I know they've done, actually I think they did some new covers pretty recently, the last couple of years. I know the same cover was used for many years, but recently there were some new ones.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. And so the last question that I have for you as a reader is, I'm always curious, do you either do reading challenges, or do you ever set like a reading goal for yourself?
Yeah, so I do sometimes do the reading challenges. I kind of just pull from different ones. I don't necessarily stick to them. I'm kind of terrible about it, but I do set reading goals for myself every year. I do the Goodreads and Storygraph as well.
So yeah, I do the Goodreads challenge every year. I've been meaning to try Storygraph. I've had so many of my friends tell me to try it, and I'm lazy. But I do definitely set a challenge for me to, read a certain amount. Just and I take it very like easy. Like I'm not heartbroken if I don't reach my goal, because sometimes I set really lofty goals.
I keep trying to like set my goals lower because I feel like I make it too much of a competition with myself. But then I just put on my clown makeup anyway and blow past it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, for this year.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so that was kind of us getting to know you as the reader. And so now we're going to get to know you as the writer and talk a little bit about your process. So this is where we jump into the segment called the open book. And so the first question that I have for you, is there a genre that you've tried to write and maybe struggled with, or is there a genre that you've wanted to try, but you just haven't built up the courage to try writing it yet?
Yeah, so I love sci-fi, but I just never worked up the courage to do sci-fi. So I'm like, I'm going to screw up the science part of the sci-fi. So I mean, I love it because I grew up with science fiction. I'm a Trekkie. I mean, I also love Star Wars, but that's more science fantasy. But I just I think I'm in my own head about getting into actually trying the genre out. So I'm getting too wrapped up in the, will it actually be believable? It's not just, doing the fantasy is easy because I can just make it up, but doing science fiction, I feel, has to be a little bit in the realm of actual plausibility.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be intimidating. I know I've done a little bit of science fiction, and it didn't occur to me, like what I kind of dabbled in is very different from someone who writes like hard science fiction. And I was just like, I have to go back to school to write that. Let's see here. Oh, so my next question, this one I think is good. So you mentioned that you have the series out with the two books, and I think this question is really good for a series. So was there any research that went into you kind of creating your world and your characters, or Did you simply create it based upon what you already knew about the genre?
A little bit of both. So like I was already actually started writing fan fiction. That's what my first book actually started off as fan fiction, and I got such good feedback of people liking the story itself, like the my own elements to it, that I stripped it down completely to the bare bones and rewrote it.
Nice.
So I kind of had this idea, but then I had to do a lot of research, like especially because my books pull a lot from folklore worldwide. So it's not just I didn't try to keep it just Eurocentric folklore. I try to like branch out. So that's a lot I don't know. So just kind of digging in deep about different folklore. The first and second book deals a lot with like plant life. I kill plants, so I needed to know um, everything plant life. And with my most recent book, my main character is a geologist, specializing in mineralogy, which I grew up with, going with rock hounds and doing a lot with minerals. But there's still a lot I didn't know. So I had to do a lot of research on different types of minerals and like kind of how they work into like magical properties.
That's really cool. I've had to do a little bit of, research into like herbs and things like that for one of the, paranormal stories that I worked on. And I got like so caught up in the research, I forgot to like write the story there for a little while. But research can be fun, but it can also be distracting.
Oh, yeah. And more than a few times I went down a rabbit hole for research for literally a throwaway line.
Yeah. All right. So the last question that I have for you as a writer is I want to so this one is kind of like an open-ended question. I always want to know about people's processes, and sometimes I'll state the question like very specifically, like, do you do this or do you do that? But this time I'm kind of leaving it open to you as far as sharing maybe like how you actually start to write a story. Like when you get an idea, how do you know that what you're like, how you are actually like starting the story, not just jotting down an idea?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I'm a total pantser, so I don't plan anything. I just go. Sometimes I like to keep notebooks or something around my room or my bag, wherever I'm at, just in case like something pops in my head and I want to write it down. But a lot of times I just sit in front of my computer. I'm like, let's do this. What do we got? And I just kind of go from there. I mean, a lot of story ideas I have just kind of like I had a weird dream. I thought it sounded cool. I went with it.
Yep. Yeah, I get a lot of people saying that, they get story ideas from dreams. I know the very first book I ever wrote totally came from a dream. So, yeah. All right. So that is you as a writer. And so now I actually want to talk about your series. So, tell us basically where the idea for the series came from.
So like I said, I was writing fan fiction. I was writing Star Wars fan fiction. I honestly cannot remember why I thought this idea up. I was a new mom. I was up pretty much every 2 hours and had nothing to do other than write. And so I'm like, I love the kind of cozy magic idea. Like it's in the real world, but it's a little bit of cozy magic. So I came up with writing it in an antique shop. And um, so I started writing these characters from Star Wars in this, real life place, but it's still a parallel magical world. And it just kind of grew from there. I post a chapter like every week or so
Okay.
until like life, and I'm like, I'm coming back, don't worry. And then when I finished it, I had such good feedback with it. People kept leaving me notes and messages. Then I'm like, well, I could probably do something with this. So more sleepless nights. And I did. I was up late. I would be up late because I was pregnant again. You can't sleep when you're like third trimester. You're like nothing feels nice. So I would just sit and write.
Cool. I think I've had a couple of stories come out of me from a sleepless night. I'm like, if I'm up, I might as well, be creative.
Yeah, utilize the time when you can.
Yes. So another question that I have, I love your book covers. They're so beautiful. And so I'm just wondering if you had a say in like kind of the design of them, and like what do you think about your covers? Like tell us a little bit about the cover design of the two books in the series.
Definitely. So I did get to say a little, I get to have my input. So they asked me kind of questions like, with the way that my publisher does romance covers, they like to have kind of like the main character, maybe the main love interest kind of thing. So they got an idea of what she kind of looks like, and then I was given a couple different mock-ups, and I got to pick what I really like the best and the best elements. With my first one, I had a couple different ones I liked, and then I ended up with what's there, and I just absolutely loved it. I loved the blues and the blacks, and I loved the colors to it. When they sent me the mock-up for my second book, I was literally putting my kids to bed. I picked up my phone, saw it, screamed in happiness, and dropped my phone because I was so overcome by how absolutely gorgeous it was. I never thought my character would be captured so perfectly in the first go.
Wow.
But it had everything.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think sometimes having a say in that kind of process of what that cover is going to look like is really critical for the writer. I mean, you get to control the story, but sometimes you have to kind of let go a little bit when it comes to that cover design. And they turned out beautiful. I mean, they look amazing. So yeah.
It's like I still like just have to stare at them sometime. I'm like, somebody just captured this so perfectly.
Yeah. So my next question, is there a plan for a third book in the series?
Yep. So book 3 is actually going to go on pre-sale next month, and it's coming out next January. And I'm actually already working on book 4.
Wow, congratulations. So you're really taking this series far. That's great.
Right now I'm kind of like on a 6-month cycle. So the Magic released in June. And so it's a little bit longer. I guess it's a little bit longer than 6 months, but the next one will come out in January, and then I'll have 2 out next year. So
cool.
Book 3, 4.
Well, that's very exciting. So without giving too much away, I would love it if you would kind of throw out a synopsis of the 2 books that are already out, and maybe give us a little teaser of the next one.
Sure, absolutely. So both books are kind of standalone in an overarching universe. The same characters come back, and a lot of things are referenced from earlier books, but you don't need to read them necessarily. So book 1, it follows a college grad student named Bree, who goes to get a part-time job in an antique shop because EA doesn't pay anything. If you've ever been in academia, certain plenty of people have this problem. Yeah. And as she's spending time there, she's realizing, hey, some of these clientele are kind of weird. And it's not really a spoiler to say the people who go there are of various folklore and creatures, like a vampire and an incubi or incubus and witches and all kinds of just different folklore creatures that I pulled from. And then she's starting to get the place is run by kind of a cranky, broody dude who turns out to be a fallen angel. And the antique shop itself is kind of sentient in that it likes to meddle, and also has kind of a collection of artifacts that they have kind of taken on magic of their own after being through enough magical energy. So it has this little storage room. This place kind of meddles, and it wants to meddle in love lives as well. So the longer she works there, the more closer she comes to the owner, and they start developing a romance. But kind of on top of this, just to kind of add to the angst, there is like this ancient evil kind of coming back, who the owners had a history with, and he's trying to pretty much destroy everything that he's built in his life. So a little bit of action, a little bit of romance, a little bit of angst, but with all my books, guaranteed happily ever after. They just have to work for it.
Good. And that's just book 1.
That's just fun. So then book 2 follows another couple who was introduced in book 1, and that is a witch and a vampire. They get together in book 1, so this is kind of showing as the relationship is progressing.
Okay.
And it deals with on kind of family dynamics. So it's called Blood Magic, and I kind of play on that because he's a vampire, and she comes from this very long bloodline of witches with very much esteem, who don't like the idea of her not continuing on that line with another witch. So a lot of the issues facing that is dealing with that kind of familial prejudice, and his vampire family, like his maker and the vampires he kind of grew with, going to come back and claim him, and tear their, the newfound happiness apart. So kind of going through that is, there is actually an ancient, well, not really ancient, but there is kind of a grudge between those two families anyway, because it's showing that there was a connection between this old vampire who sired the main character, and then the witch's family, like they had a connection back in the day. So a lot of family things, a lot of like just personal angst, and showing how a relationship can strengthen itself, and that, not necessarily having that breakup itself.
Okay.
They can still be together, and that, the ties of blood, in which whatever that means, be vampire or familial blood, not necessarily going to tear apart love.
That's cool.
I really loved, probably the easiest one I've ever written. It was so easy with them, just because they're wonderful characters. It's very Grumpy Sunshine, very much so. And food takes a big part in it too. I made myself hungry writing this book.
I know this is weird. I don't know if it's weird or not, but I love reading about food in stories. I just feel like there's something about it. Like I can read, an entire book about someone's life from childhood to death, but I'm just like, well, what did they have at their birthday? What were they serving at the wedding party? Like, come on. I love it when there's food in a story.
Yeah, I really like putting it in there. I mean, I have a character, my witch's father, he's a kitchen witch. So he's all about making something and feeding everybody. So I get really descriptive at family dinners, because for them, that's very central. It's very important to them, having these meals together. So food is a big thing. And how my vampire then relates to that is, he comes from, his family was Taiwanese in San Francisco right around the time of the Great Earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
For them, food tied their in a very, is a cultural way. So for him, it was also very important. And he tries to share that food and his culture then with the people he loves in his new life. Even though he can't eat it, because he just has an overwhelming urge to eat people.
Cool. I like that. And what about the book that's coming out?
Yeah, so book 3 then follows another couple who were first introduced in book 1. It's actually the adopted brother of my main character in the first one, Bree. So this is also another established relationship, but with a bit of a twist, because they've been together, but because his partner is an incubus, he's not exactly faithful. And he tries to tell him, like, this is my nature, you can't change me. I know you want more from me, but I can't give more. And it's part of a journey that it's called Heart Magic. It's not just about a romance, it's also about self-love. And that's with my main character, Wes, coming to realize that he does deserve better, and that he can't expect somebody to change for him. Right. And then he ends up meeting, another kitchen witch. I wanted a kitchen witch. I teased this character in book 2. He was supposed to be just like a one-off. I fell in love with him too much. So I'm like, he's my love interest for book 3.
Wow.
He has his own bakery, so there's a lot of pastry talk. And then kind of falling in love together while still having then this former partner, this incubus, and well, now I want you back because I can't have you. So kind of dealing with that kind of strain in their relationship. But I decided with this one not to have it tends to be a third act breakup. I didn't really want that. Mm-hmm. So while they take some time apart, they don't want to break up. It's just hey, you're a mess, sort yourself out, and when you're ready, let's talk together.
Okay.
So this was a process for this one because I wanted to make my main character, I try to add a little bit of realist, like all my characters have a little bit of mental health issues. So in book two, my main character has extreme anxiety. For book three, it was a little more dear to my heart. He's bipolar, which I am as well. So I kind of showed that I had scenes there of like what it means like when you're off your medication or how you're feeling on the day to day and how like kind of keeping that regimen. So kind of like he's kind of my child here. And then I put a little bit more of myself into him.
I love that. I always feel like anything that you write as a writer at some level, even if it's just very, very kind of superficial, it's always going to be a little bit biographical, autobiographical. But then like when you can really speak to those personal elements, obviously without putting too much of yourself out there,
Yeah.
talking about those things. I mean, like you said, mental health, if that's important to you, putting that in your story, like for me, I remember I put on a lot of elements, about, non-traditional kind of family dynamics, adoption and things like that, because like that's something that, appealed to me. So I love when I find out that these interesting elements in a story tell you more about, the author. So I love that you put that in there. I think that's wonderful.
I believe because like that you are speaking to people through your books, even if it is fiction. So like yeah, having a character of bipolar, it was important to me to show because I had a scene where he forgets his medication and I wrote it literally like a few days after I had that. And I mean I've been dedicated long enough that I had a day. And I'm like, why do I feel like lead? And like getting out of my bed is the hardest thing I'm going to do today. And I'm like, oh yeah. And so then I wrote that in there because that was an experience I had been having. Writing a lot about food, especially baked goods, because I like to bake, was important to put in there. And then not so much in this series, although I have a couple of things, but like in another book I've written, having a main character who is Jewish to show my Jewish identity in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
love,
met
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I know, just like because that's very special to me, especially as a convert to Judaism, Jew by choice. It was something I got to take on as my identity. So I liked writing that into my characters. I think even book three, I have a Shomer Shabbos vampire because I thought, well, if a new vampire doesn't necessarily give up their identity yet, if they're only a few years transition, well, if he was practicing before, he might not necessarily give up that yet. So I like showing that.
Yeah, I love that. I love when you have an opportunity to kind of play with some of those different dynamics. I mean, like you said, even though it's fiction, you can still like speak to the readers. Having, different types of representation. Someone may not have ever, read a character who was a certain, way or had a diagnosis or practiced a religion or something. And by being able to show them kind of something authentic in an entertaining way, I love when I get something like that in a book. It just, to me, it just enhances the experience. So I love that you are putting some of those important things to you in your stories.
Yeah, I mean, in general, like, and also like having diversity in my books. Like, I know as like a white girl, like I can only speak to my experiences, which is why using sensitivity readers for me was important. Especially because like when I wrote the first one, it was only being one book, and then they wanted more. So my main characters then in the subsequent books are not necessarily my race. So it's a lot of when people and their experiences that don't necessarily coincide with mine, because I can't speak for other people's stories, but I think it's important that people can see other characters in books.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, this series sounds so amazing, and I can't wait to dive into it. Maybe by the time this airs, I'll have like read it and reviewed it. Sometimes I'm a little slow, but I always go back and add a link if I do it. But I'm very excited about this series.
I'm
So
excited to read it, but I told you TBR gets so long. It's
I know.
overwhelming.
I know. I mean, my TBR is I'm pretty sure that if I had like physical copies of the books, they would reach like all the way across the galaxy. I'll get to them eventually.
The TBR on my Goodreads, the TBR just on my Kindle. I have a physical TBR bookshelf right here. It's packed. There's no space, and now I'm just kind of laying things on its side. So
Yep, that's how it
it,
is.
it does. I run social media for a bookstore, so I get the employee discount at the
Oh,
bookstore. So
dangerous.
I'm only
All right, so I do want to go ahead and segue into the last section of our little interview. I love talking about your series, but now it's time to get silly. This is what I call don't judge a book by its cover because I just ask off the wall questions and see what kind of answers I get.
Love it.
All right, so this first one, and typically I'm pretty random about these, but I came up with this one just for you. So, if you were the BFF to the protagonist of a sweet romance, what would she or he be like? Who would your BFF be?
My BFF, I probably like my BFF would probably be just like my real life best friend, which is a bookish, nerdy, wonderful human being who likes to cook, um, tells the funniest jokes sometimes, and is just a rock of a person. Someone I've always been able to depend on. So I think it'd be just like my friend. She's also a writer. She was my dungeon master in D&D. That's how I met her. So yeah, I think it'd be just like her.
That's awesome. I did see that you liked D&D. I'm gonna get to the next question, but how did you get into that?
I'm kind of a legacy kid. So I actually got into D&D late in life, but like my dad played D&D in our basement in the 90s with all his friends, and I wanted to sit around and watch, but I was like a little kid, so they didn't think it was appropriate because they like to enjoy some beer while they play.
Right.
But I was like playing with the and then as like when I got to my 20s, I started watching Critical Role, and I'm like, oh, this is my time, you know. So I went to my local game shop. They ran Adventurers League, and I started playing. I got sat at a table, I think my second session, with the people who become some of my best friends, and we played for years together.
That's awesome. That's cool. All righty. So here's my next kind of off the wall question. If you had to appear in a live talent show for a chance to win a ton of money, what would your talent be?
Oh, that is a tough one. I would have said before playing the violin, I've played since I was like 10, but I'm way out of practice, so maybe not that. But if you like dad jokes, I'm sure I can come up with one.
That,
You
that
like you like bread? Let me bake some bread.
Hey, if you can do it on stage, why not?
Need somebody to quote the mummy verbatim in front of you and maybe act it out a little bit. Yeah, I got this.
I love it. I love it. I don't think I have any like I know I'm definitely not singing. I wouldn't want to kill anyone, but um I think I could maybe do like some improv, come up with the story and kind of act it out, like see how that would go. But that's about the extent of my live talent. All right. So this last question I have for you is a bit of a scenario kind of setup situation. So here we go. It says, you're stuck in a futuristic, life-sustaining time capsule with the ability to provide you with anything you need to survive. However, the AI that runs it has never been given cookbooks to read or any other culinary source material beyond the parameters of how to prepare a handful of meats and vegetables. So, before you go into this time capsule, you are given the opportunity to bring a lifetime supply of one of the following, but you can only pick one: ketchup, barbecue sauce, hot sauce, ranch, or queso.
I was originally just going to say hot sauce, but then you said ranch, and I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Ohio, and we drink ranch like it's a food group. So I'm probably going to have to
say. Yep. So you're stuck in this time capsule and you've got enough ranch to last the rest of your life. That's what you're working with?
You know what? I would be satisfied. I'll go with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ranch.
Yeah, this one's the tough one for me because I really like hot sauce, but it doesn't like me. So I don't think I could torture myself for like the rest of eternity with it. I'd probably have to go with queso.
And also then it would depend on the hot sauce. I mean, if we're talking just like Tabasco, then I'll pass. But I mean, if we're going, something real good, then I might have to rethink the range. But
Do you like sriracha?
I do like sriracha.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I
But if
miss
it's
sriracha.
tapatio, I'm there.
Cool. All right. Well, I have had such a good time, but we have come to the end. So, thank you so much for being here and sharing, your story with us and your experiences. Before we go ahead and tell the viewers where they can find you and your work online.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me pretty much on every social media. I lurk everywhere. I'm at Kait Disney on Instagram. I'm at Kait Reads a Book on Twitter. I think author Kait Disney on TikTok, and you can find my author page on Facebook as well. I post a lot of dumb stuff just because I just like to post whatever. I post a lot of my book hauls, what I'm reading, and just pretty much dumb things in general. You can find my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books, or you can order it from your local indie bookstore. They can get it in hardback and paperback. It's also available on audiobook as well. Support local, shop local. Definitely support your local indie bookseller. And if you want to get signed copies, you can go to The Last Word in Mount Airy, Maryland. Go to their site, and I sign copies there as well.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. All right. Well, all right, guys, be sure to stick around because Kait has a teaser that she's going to share with you. To my Patreon subscribers, she's got a special little treat for you guys. And that is all I have. Until next time, guys, stay safe, be blessed, and have fun reading.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.